Okay, now it's time to actually dig in and start taking a look at Angular. Now, I actually want to sort of break the fourth wall here real quick and just touch on our upcoming delivery style. Now, what you're going to notice with this module is we're going to start off by very high level, introducing all of the various building blocks and categorizing them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to describe one of the building blocks, break, and then do a demo. And then we're going to come back and describe the next one, break, and then do a demo. And so that's the way that this module here is going to be structured. So again, we'll do a real quick high level, and then we'll talk about that first building block, we'll do a demo, next building block, we'll do a demo, etc. And so as a result, all the videos that we're going to have will be relatively short, which is kind of nice because that allows you to get in and focus in on the spots that you really want to dig into. So let's start off with that high-level overview. Spiros, what are all of the different building blocks that we have for creating an Angular 2 app?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of broke it down to three pieces. There's three main parts of Angular 2, and they are the directives. There's the data flow that we'll also learn how to use the data flow, and then also providers. In short, directives are going to be broken down into components, which are pieces of our application, essentially. Attributes that allow us to style the templates of our application, and then structural directives, which are the manipulation of that data, the manipulation of that HTML. And then data flow, interpolation, which is printing variables, event binding, which is triggering events, and then two-way binding, which is pretty specific and unique to Angular in the sense that we can keep variables updated in real time as we change them. And lastly, providers. Providers essentially provide things to us. There are service providers we can create where we can reuse data, reuse logic and code for data storing or manipulation of such, or API calls, those kind of things. And then there's also libraries, of course, we will need to use and lean on, such as what we've used in jQuery. In this case, there's other libraries you can use similar to that.
Okay. So talk to me then about that first building block. Talk to me about a component. What is a component?
Yeah, sure. So I took this quote right out of Angular's website, which is reusable building blocks of an application. Essentially what it is, and I put a visual there for you all to see. A component is broken down into three major pieces. There are more, of course, but I left them out to keep it simple. Every component has its own piece of HTML written inside of it, its own piece of styles, CSS essentially, that reflects that template HTML, and then also all the JavaScript code that also is related to that HTML. So essentially what you do is these are essentially building blocks. They're pieces of your application that you build all together, and then you just kind of add them in any part of your website that you want to. So let's take a look at this, and let's look at some code to put this in a little more context. So I left the graphic there so you keep that in mind, and I kind of color-coded the different parts. So don't worry too much about the @ component. What that is a decorator, and really what it translates to is that component decorator has a selector, a template, and styles properties, and it all relates to the following class right under that decorator. Again, don't worry too much about the specifics of that, but if we just look at it at a high level, this whole piece fits together from the @ component until the very last closing bracket after console log. And that whole thing is a component called, in this case, myAppComponent, and it uses a tag called myApp. So we say that this component is going to have an H3 tag that says task list application, and we're going to give it its own style. So any H3 tag on this template will be a color of gray for the text. And we also say that when this loads, we will just console log the hello Angular. And for us to use this component and actually have it show up on our page, we simply have to make sure that we have the myApp tag available on our application. And that whole piece there would be imported right on the application.
So then when I go in and I view that page, then what I'm going to see inside of that myApp element is that H3 that you defined with that little bit of HTML, which we can take a look at here real quick, that little task list application. And then that's also going to be gray. So we've defined the style, which we would typically have in CSS, but we can have that in our component. And we've got the HTML, and it's going to go inside that myApp element.
Exactly. And interestingly enough, if we repeat the myApp tag multiple times in our web page, we will see that whole set, the whole piece reused multiple times over.
Oh, so if maybe I had chunked that down into some form of a component that maybe, I don't know, maybe my component was going to display a task because I know that we're going to be doing a task list, then I could just reuse that for each task that I might have.
Exactly.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
You got it.
I dig it.
Awesome. So let's look at this a little further. Now, this is the example that I'm showing here, but I'd like to show another example you'll see very commonly on the internet and in general. Same thing as we had before, but if you notice the template now, we have URL, template URL and style URLs, and that one particularly is an array. This pretty much just allows us to keep our application modular. So if we have a large template we want to load, which is very likely we would, we can keep that in a separate file. That's really its purpose. That's pretty much it. So it allows us to write a lot more text, of course, and keep these component directives small in size and just kind of reference those files in the same folder, essentially. Now, I'm going to switch over to the next slide and show you that you can also include other directives. Components are directives, right? So if we wanted our component here to have other directives included in it, we could do that, as you see there in the gray, and also providers, which is libraries. Again, don't worry too much about it for now. Just know that a component can take these properties. And lastly, I'm going right back to what we had before with the slide. This is the pattern we will use for this demo moving forward. I'd like to keep as much as possible, the least amount of modularized code, funny enough, so we can kind of keep it together and kind of close, so we don't have to worry about other files and having to switch files and import files. Just keep it as simple as possible to understand the core concept of components.
But we can, if our application gets bigger, we can break that apart as needed, as you just showed.
We can and we do, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Awesome.
So then I guess the next thing is just to get in and take a look at a bit of code.
Yes.
I like it.